The place looked safe, clean floors, bright lights, calm voices. People walked in believing they would be protected. That belief lasted until the doors closed behind them. The call came in just after midnight. A young woman had vanished from a facility that promised safety and care. No alarms had sounded. No emergency report had been filed. By the time police arrived, the hallway cameras had already been overwritten. It was as if the night had swallowed her whole. Detective Aaron Miller stood outside the building, staring at the sign that still read "Authorized Personnel Only." He had worked violent crimes for years, but this felt different. Places like this weren't supposed to lose people. They were designed to prevent harm, not hide it. Inside, the air felt too quiet. Staff spoke softly, carefully. Everyone had an answer, but no one had the same one. A supervisor said the woman had left on her own. A nurse said she was never scheduled to be there. A guard said he didn't see anything unusual. Each sentence sounded rehearsed. Miller walked the halls. Blue emergency lights from patrol cars outside spilled through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He noticed a door at the end of the corridor, scratched, dented, recently repainted. When he asked about it, a staff member quickly changed the subject. This place had rules, procedures, forms for everything. Yet somehow, a person had disappeared without a trace. As the investigation began, Miller learned this was not the first time something had gone wrong here. Complaints had been filed, concerns raised, each one quietly closed. Unfounded, the record said. No further action needed. The building wasn't a jail, it wasn't a hospital, it wasn't a school. It was part of a system meant to protect people when they were most vulnerable. That made the silence even louder. In the following days, Miller spoke to families, parents who once trusted the system, siblings who believed their loved ones were safe inside. Their stories shared a common thread. When they asked questions, they were told not to worry. When they pushed harder, they were labeled difficult. One mother described her son's last phone call. He sounded scared. He said things were not right. He asked to come home. 2 days later, the system reported him transferred. No one could say where. The deeper Miller dug, the more patterns emerged. Staff turnover was high. Reports were vague. Video footage often malfunctioned during key moments. Oversight agencies received summaries instead of raw data. The system was built to appear transparent while hiding just enough to protect itself. Not every day felt intense. Some days were slow. Paperwork, meetings, interviews that led nowhere. Miller wondered if he was chasing shadows. Maybe the system wasn't evil. Maybe it was just broken. Then a former employee reached out. She asked to meet in a quiet diner across town. Her hands shook as she held her coffee. She said she left because she couldn't take it anymore. We were told to keep things calm, she said. Not to fix them, just to keep them quiet. She described nights when doors were locked early, when reports were edited, when supervisors warned staff not to write down certain details. If you push back, she said, you don't last. Miller asked about the missing woman. The employee looked away. She's not the first, she said. She's just the first you're asking about. That sentence changed everything. Miller requested old incident logs. Many were missing. Others were copied and recopied until names blurred. Dates shifted. Language softened. Incident replaced injury. Miscommunication replaced neglect. The system was not failing by accident. It was failing by design. As pressure mounted, administrators held a press conf. Errands. They promised cooperation, transparency, a full internal review. Cameras flashed. Statements were read. The words sounded right. Behind the scenes, access tightened. Staff were instructed to. The sirens outside grew louder, then slowly faded into the distance. Detective Aaron Miller stood still, staring at the dark camera in the corner of the room. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew exactly where he was. By the time backup arrived, the power was fully restored. The building looked calm again, almost peaceful. Too peaceful. Miller handed over the badge clip to an evidence tech. It belonged to the missing woman. There was no denying it now. She had been in this room. But when Miller asked staff about the room, their answers didn't match. One said it was a storage space. Another said it hadn't been used in years. A third claimed it wasn't even on the official floor plan. Yet the fresh paint, the clean floor, and the broken camera told a different story. The next morning, the story hit the local news. Headlines spoke carefully, using words like questions raised and ongoing review. The facility released a statement saying they were fully cooperating. Families watching at home felt a mix of hope and fear. Many of them had been waiting years for someone to finally listen. Miller's phone didn't stop ringing. Former residents, past employees, people who had tried to forget what happened inside those walls. One by one, they shared their stories. A young man said he had been locked in a room for hours after asking to make a phone call. A woman described being punished for reporting unsafe conditions. Another former resident said people who complained were labeled difficult and quietly moved, sometimes in the middle of the night. Moved where? No one ever knew. As Miller pieced together the accounts, a pattern became clear. The system wasn't violent in obvious ways. There were no constant screams or visible chaos. Instead, it worked through control, through paperwork, through silence. People didn't disappear suddenly. They faded out, buried under procedures and excuses. Oversight agencies were supposed to prevent this. Miller contacted one directly. The response was polite, slow, and distant. They said they relied on reports submitted by the facility itself. Surprise inspections were rare. Staffing was limited. "We do the best we can," the official said. The system was watching itself. Pressure began to mount on Miller from above. His supervisor called him in for a meeting. The message was clear without being said directly. Be careful. This case involved powerful people, funding, politics, reputation. Miller didn't argue. He left the office knowing he was on his own. That night, he met again with the former employee at the diner. This time, she brought documents, copies she had saved before quitting, incident reports with handwritten notes in the margins, emails instructing staff to rephrase events. One message stood out: do not escalate unless absolutely necessary. "What does absolutely necessary mean?" Miller asked. She shook her head. It meant never. One report described a resident found injured. The official version said accidental fall. The handwritten note said left alone too long. Another report listed a resident as transferred successfully. The margin note read, family not informed. Miller felt anger rising, but he kept his voice steady. "Why didn't you go public?" She looked down. Because people who tried didn't last. Some lost their jobs. Some were threatened. And some, she stopped. Some just disappeared from the system. The next day, Miller obtained a court order to access archived data. Not summaries, not reports, raw logs. It took hours of arguing, but eventually, a junior tech complied. What Miller saw made his stomach drop. Logs showed repeated gaps in camera footage, always at night, always in the same corridors. Access cards used at odd hours by supervisors who claimed they were home. Door lows, books overridden without explanation, and transfers recorded without receiving locations. This wasn't negligence, it was coordination. As Miller prepared to move forward, something else happened. The former employee stopped answering calls. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Miller drove to her apartment. The lights were on. Her car was parked outside. Inside, everything was untouched. No signs of a struggle, no note, just silence. On her kitchen table sat a single envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten message. "They know you're looking. Don't trust the review." Miller took the drive and left before anyone could notice him there. Back at his office, he opened the files. Video clips, emails, internal messages. One folder was labeled Containment. Inside were instructions on how to manage high-risk residents. Not through care, but through isolation, delay, and removal from records. At the center of it all was one name, a senior administrator who had signed off on every questionable decision, a person praised publicly for running a tight operation. Miller finally understood the truth. This place wasn't failing everyone. It was sacrificing a few to protect the many, and protecting itself above all. As he prepared the warrant request, his computer screen suddenly froze. Then a message appeared, typed in plain text. "You're making this worse." Before Miller could react, the lights in his office flickered, and somewhere in the city, another family received a call that changed everything. Former employees stopped answering calls. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Miller drove to her apartment. The lights were on. Her car was parked outside. Inside, everything was untouched. No signs of a struggle, no note, just silence. On her kitchen table sat a single envelope. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten message. They know you're looking. Don't trust the review. Miller took the drive and left before anyone could notice him there. Back at his office, he opened the files. Video clips, emails, internal messages. One folder was labeled Containment. Inside were instructions on how to manage high-risk residents, not through care, but through isolation, delay, and removal from records. At the center of it all was one name, a senior administrator who had signed off on every questionable decision, a person praised publicly for running a tight operation. Miller finally understood the truth. This place wasn't failing everyone. It was sacrificing a few to protect the many, and protecting itself above all. As he prepared the warrant request, his computer screen suddenly froze. Then a message appeared, typed in plain text. "You're making this worse." Before Miller could react, the lights in his office flickered, and somewhere in the city, another family received a call that changed everything. The phone call came just before sunrise. Detective Aaron Miller was still at his desk, eyes burning from hours of watching footage on the flash drive. The caller ID showed a blocked number. "This is Detective Miller," he said. A pause, then a calm voice. "You don't know me, but I know what you found." Miller straightened. Outside his office window, the city was quiet, washed in pale blue morning light. "If you know, then you also know this doesn't end well for you." The voice didn't sound worried. "That depends on how much you want the truth." The call ended. Minutes later, Miller received an address, no message, just coordinates. The location wasn't a home or an office. It was an old municipal building scheduled for demolition, sitting at the edge of the city near the river, a place no one paid attention to anymore. Miller hesitated. Every instinct told him this was dangerous, but the case had already crossed that line. He grabbed his coat and left without telling anyone. The building looked abandoned, broken windows, peeling paint, a faded government seal still clinging to the front door. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old paper. His footsteps echoed as he followed a narrow hallway to a room lit by a single lamp. A man sat at a table, face hidden in shadow. "I won't give you my name," the man said, "but I worked oversight for years." Miller stayed standing. "Then you know the system failed." The man nodded slowly. "It didn't fail. It adapted." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents stamped confidential, oversight reports that were never released, internal warnings ignored. One memo stood out. It recommended shutting the facility down years earlier due to irreversible risk. "It was buried," the man said. "Too expensive. Too embarrassing." Miller flipped through the pages. People disappeared. "Yes," the man replied, and every time it happened, the SRE, stem adjusted. New language, new procedures, same outcome. Miller asked the question that had haunted him since the beginning. Where did they go? The man leaned forward slightly. Some were moved quietly to other facilities. Some were mislabeled. And some... He paused. Some became problems no one wanted to track. Miller felt his chest tighten. "You're saying they erased them?" "They erased responsibility," the man corrected. "The people just got caught in the process." Before Miller could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. The man's head snapped up. "They shouldn't be here." Lights flicked on outside the room. Voices. Radios. "Go," the man whispered. "If they connect us, everything you have becomes useless." Miller grabbed the folder and slipped out a side door just as security flooded the hall. He didn't stop running until he reached his car. By the time he returned to his office, the news had already broken. The facility announced it would temporarily suspend operations pending an internal review. Officials spoke of isolated failures and commitment to transparency. The administrator whose name Miller had traced appeared on camera, calm and confident. Miller knew better. He submitted his findings to the district attorney. The response came hours later. "We need more time. This is complex." Complex meant slow. Slow meant dangerous. That night, Miller reviewed the folder again. One page near the back caught his eye, a list of names. Residents marked as inactive, some matched missing persons reports. Others didn't exist anywhere else. One name was circled in red, the missing woman. Next to her name was a note, relocated special handling. Miller searched the system for the term. It led to a classified program operating outside standard oversight. Facilities not listed publicly. Transfers approved at the highest level. This was bigger than one bill. Ding, bigger than one city. As Miller processed the scale of it, his phone buzzed again. A text message this time. No number. You're close. Too close. Miller stepped outside. The street was empty. A cold wind moved through the trees. Across the road, a car idled with its headlights off. He took out his phone and opened the recording app. If anything happens to me, he said quietly, this goes public. He didn't know if anyone was listening. He assumed they were. Back inside, he began uploading files to a secure server. Slowly, carefully, every document, every video, every message. Halfway through, his screen froze. A system alert popped up. Unauthorized access detected. Then another message appeared. Same plain text as before. This is your last warning. The lights in the building flickered. Once, twice. Miller backed away from his desk as the office went dark, illuminated only by the glow of his monitor. Somewhere below, a door slammed. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Miller grabbed the folder and moved toward the emergency exit. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with certainty. The place everyone thought was safe had never been just one place. It was a network. And he had just stepped inside it. As the stairwell door creaked open, Miller realized one terrifying truth. Stopping this system would take more than one investigation, and surviving it would take even more. The footsteps were getting closer. Share this video with others who love dark documentaries, comment your theories, and subscribe for more chilling stories that uncover hidden truths.